Everybody, and welcome to another episode of the United States of Movie Podcast, the podcast where every week we try to answer that impossible question. We try to define each state in the United States by just one movie, which is basically impossible, but a whole lot of fun, especially because of my amazing co-hosts who love movies just as much as I do. My name is Ollie Pettigrew. I used to host a movie show called ePow.max in Asia. Movies are my passion, much like my co-host. Ryan Sarnett, welcome back, buddy. How you doing?
Hey, I'm great. It's so good to be here.
And of course, always sitting in his video store, Will Hirsch. Welcome back, Will.
Thank you for having me. I just miss my friend Andy Dufresne.
Flawless
Morgan
Freeman. Yeah.
Flawless. Absolutely perfect, because the state we are attacking this particular week is the state of Maine. Maine is, up there top right as far as I know. It's part of the New England. Honestly, I'm a big fan of old England.
Who can say?
But of course, Maine has had its fair share of movies made up there. In particular, movies made by Stephen King, well, books and things like that. There's a lot of Stephen King stories that come out of Maine. So we were very tempted to not do any of them.
We had a brief discussion about that, and they're like,
that would have been hilarious.
You guys had to set me aside, like, Ryan, you cannot pick Thinner again.
But in my particular case, I was like, I kind of went down the Stephen King route, but it's also because it's one of my favorite movies, and it's definitely something I want to talk about, because I picked The Shawshank Redemption, written and directed by Frank Darabont, based on the novella by Stephen King, which was probably, just basically 3 lines of dialogue and then a bunch of lines of cocaine immediately after that. When did this movie come out? I forgot to write that down. Shawshank Redemption. What year is this?
95?
94. Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is crazy because it still feels like a fresh, and I know because it's like a period piece, but it still feels pretty fresh.
It does. It looks incredible. Yeah. It's only on this particular rewatch that I clocked that it's a shot by Roger Deakins, which is like, and again, I've only watched this movie like a million times, but
only because one of the guards is named Deakins.
Yes.
You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah. That's the whole the Easter egg. So Mr. Deakins. I go,
now I'm wondering, like, is there a Deakins in like every movie that he shot and we just don't know, like the Deakins verse?
Oh man,
Skyfall. They don't call him James Bond. They just call him Roger Deakins, right?
But
that was confusing.
This movie was. I love this movie. An absolute treasure to rewatch, and we will be getting into that as well. But we've actually got another absolute treasure of a movie. Another movie that when I discovered, I just instantly loved. I love it dearly. It was Will's choice. Will, tell us about your movie.
Thought it was my movie.
I picked this is one of my favorite. This and Princess Mononoke are like neck and neck for my favorite animated films of all time. And I picked The Iron Giant.
Yeah.
Oh, what a cracker.
Adore this movie.
Maybe the best Vin Diesel movie ever made.
I don't know. Have you seen Fast X?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes.
The Iron Giant, 1999. It's the directorial debut of Brad Bird, who would go on to do things like The Incredibles, Mission Impossible 4, and the entirely forgettable Tomorrowland. We won't get into that. It stars Jennifer Aniston, Harry Connick Jr., Christopher McDonald, absolutely stealing every scene.
Just as Shooter McGavin. John Mahoney, Vin Diesel with about 6 lines, and the young Eli Marienthal, who we do know, if you've ever seen the American Pie movies, he's Stifler's younger brother in the first 2 American. Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah. I was like, oh, that kid. Yeah. He actually won awards for this, and I'm not surprised because we were texting about this, and we will get into it. Some of the best voice acting / character animations in any movie ever made.
This seemed like it was the pinnacle as far as 2D animation goes. And I went to school for animation, and just the work on this film was just incredible. It was almost like, and I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure I'm wrong, but it was just like the last great 2D, like traditionally animated film,
Well, you can, I would say that you're definitely on the right lines because it's right there as we started getting crossover. We've got 2D animation with sort of CGI generated 3D models, like his bike that he's riding, the cars that are driving, of course, the robot. And it's kind of reminiscent of Lilo and Stitch, which came out around the sort of time and it had a similar thing. It was all animated, classic sort of Disney animation, but then you got the spaceships and you got things like that, which have sort of 3D models. And I think absolutely we're right up there. And it's almost like they're trying to get back there. Yeah. Because just the intricacies, you can almost see the pen marks, you know, on the characters, but it's the looks and expressions and the faces and everything else and the way their bodies move. It is
expertly done,
top notch.
Yeah. And it feels like, I was thinking of, it's very like E.T. adjacent. It feels like a Spielberg movie in that sense, you know?
That's exactly how I described it. I was like, it's an animated Spielberg movie. That's what I said to Mrs. And and it's got that exact same sort of feel. You're damn right. That's exactly what it is. It gives you that same feeling that E.T. does. It gives you that same, it's got the heart. It's got that kind of like, it's unafraid, like much like 80s Spielberg, he's unafraid of guns and violence. There is a bit of danger here.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, that's the whole ethos of the movie is like the log line of this movie is guns are bad, robot good.
Yeah. Until we get to Ready Player One, where they just turn him into a gun again. Which fantastic. What a great idea.
Of course they do. Based off the Howard Hughes poem, it's something that you do study at school in England. So I had read The Iron Giant as a kid, so I was very familiar with the idea of it. So when they announced the movie, I was like, oh, interesting. And I was just doing a little bit of reading on it now, and it was kind of like it was Brad Bird felt that Maine in the 50s, neck deep in the Soviet fear and Sputnik and everything else, is a place that looks calm on the outside, but underneath it's all like simmering fear, was the perfect place to drop this robot. And I will agree. I think it's amazing. And we will get back to that once we cover the movie that Ryan brought to the table. Now, this is a movie
for the next 2 hours. Yep.
This is a movie that I hadn't seen until this week. It's a movie I've been very familiar with, but even Mrs., she sat down, she watched it, and she was like, when was this movie made? Tell us about this movie, Ryan.
I picked, I think it was 2001. Wow.
Yeah,
Jesus.
That's what I mean. 2001?
I picked David Wayne's Wet Hot American Summer, a movie that is very near and dear to my heart and is certainly not for everyone as most of his movies are. And I wish we could have all watched this together because I know you hadn't seen it. And this is a movie that's best enjoyed. Back in the day, I would use this movie as a friendship barometer, like when I would show it to people to know if our personalities would be good or you're just dead to me. So tread very lightly, sir.
Yeah, to all of the listeners or watchers of the show, Will and Ryan have been fucking insufferable this week. As the text message said, was nothing but quotes from a movie I've never seen.
Pretty much, yeah.
It was so much so that you didn't even let us know when you were watching it. You just kind of you just had a clandestine viewing. You closed the blinds, turned your phone
off.
It
was a bit. Honestly, I've had a crazy week. Absolutely crazy. I barely had a spare minute, and now Mrs. has gone and got, as Ryan saw over video call a little while ago, a new freaking puppy. So I basically I realized, okay, I've got like a spare 4 hours. And I sat and I did Iron Giant and Wet Hot American Summer back to back.
Oh, and you could have just watched Wet Hot American Summer twice, so that's on you.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Wet Hot American Summer. So David Wayne, if you don't know, he also directed Role Models, which is funny. They Came Together, which we almost did on this podcast. Which, if you haven't,
I will do that movie.
Amy Poehler, Paul Rudd rom-com, but it skewers all rom-coms. It's brilliant.
The best.
Wet Hot American Summer. Bear with me. Stars Janine Garofalo, David Hyde Pierce, Molly Shannon, Paul Rudd, Christopher Maloney, Elizabeth Banks, Ken Marino, Michael Ian Black, Bradley Cooper in his film debut, Amy Schumer, and Michael Showalter. I mean, guys, the cast is insane.
Well, you're leaving out maybe the most important character, H. John Benjamin as the can of vegetables.
As a can of vegetables, Joe Latrulio as well from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So many familiar faces in a movie that is, I mean, we were about 15, 20 minutes in. Mrs. was cackling a lot, but she also turned to me, she's going, are we supposed to be high for this movie? And I think yes, is probably.
I think it enhances the experience. I don't think it's necessary, but it definitely.
It is, honestly, I really need to watch it again because so much happens. It's constantly bouncing around. I mean, to basically boil down the plot would be impossible, but essentially it's the last day of summer camp. All of these guys in their mid-20s are playing 16-year-olds, and that's half the
flawlessly.
joke.
flawlessly.
Like half the joke. And they're all the camp counselors, and it's basically the last day of camp. But that last day is basically like every other summer camp or summer movie or any other baseball movie or any other kids movie crammed into one day.
Yeah.
It goes from hour to hour, but essentially it was 8 weeks worth of plot in one day.
There's
insane.
There's a brief scene where they have, and again, like this movie means so much to me because I went to a Jewish summer camp.
Yes, I
much
saw.
similar to this, but it was more in the 90s, so it was a little different. But a lot of the things are still there, like the campfires and all that stuff. But the inter-camp baseball thing was such a big deal. Like we would go to other camps and play them in sports, or they would come to us. And there's a scene in this movie where that happens, and they walk up and he's like, "Yeah, we're this is pretty much well-worn territory." And they don't even play; they just leave, and it just cuts. Like, it's phenomenal. It's fantastic.
They even reference how no, it would be like this will be the last day and we'll win it. They talk about all the plots of what movies would do, and then they just don't do it. They just they do something else.
It's one of my favorite movies.
You've got one guy, Michael Showalter, I think Coop, who's trying to hook up with this girl who is dating Paul Rudd, who is hilarious in this movie. Paul Rudd.
Phenomenal.
He's amazing. You've got Janine Garofalo, who is the sort of head of the camp that she's falling in love with David Hyde Pierce, who's a bit of an astrophysicist, who also there's a bit of a side plot about a piece of Skylab falling down. You've got Molly Shannon, who's going through a breakup and being counseled through it by her sort of her kids. And
there are deleted scenes that are very troubling, but I bet them
because that was wild. You've got what else? Christopher Maloney and his buddy, the guy that works with him. Christopher Maloney just like
80
constantly
miles.
Stealing every scene he's in.
Oh my God!
Constantly saying something that then says, "I didn't say that." He does hump a fridge.
Yeah.
At some point, again, we have Elizabeth.
Cheers to applause. Yeah.
We've got Michael Ian Black and Bradley Cooper. As soon as Bradley Cooper showed up on screen, my missus went, "He's gay."
Well, he's like he's with Amy Poehler as like the theater directors.
Yeah.
Director / choreographer.
Wait, did I say Amy Schumer? I meant Amy Poehler.
Amy Poehler, yeah. We'll cut that.
And then that's right, it's Amy Poehler. Then you got and then you've got Joe Latrulio trying to help Ken Marino, both guys from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Ken Marino is desperately trying to hook up with the Lucis girl at camp, but everything goes wrong on that particular day, and then she ends up sleeping with literally everybody else. I'm like, okay, there you go. That's great. There is the plot. I will tell you this much, is it was around halfway through the movie that I realized they were shooting a lot of the people in pairs. So there were actually very few times when the whole cast or groups of cast are together. Yeah. They're telling separate stories stitched together into one crazy...
It's like a Dazed and Confused. Like you have these little separate vignettes of... And it takes place in over one day. It's basically the exact same movie, but better.
Yeah. It's probably no surprise they wanted to make a film structured like Nashville, Dazed and Confused, Do the Right Thing. So yes, but it's also just, instead of being like Dazed and Confused, which tells the heightened reality of the 70s kind of day, this movie is ridiculous in every way. Like the bit where the guy gets lifted up by his junk and is like, he's 3 feet in the air. Yeah. The Michael Ian Black, Bradley Cooper, just suddenly very aggressive sex scene.
But even before that, the dialogue before, because it's like you've got the three guys and they're spying on the counselor babes, and they're like, look at her chicken wings, and she's like, oh my God, she's got Playboy titties. And they got like, and she's like, what does he say? He's like, they're talking about doing the ultimate, and he's like, you talking about penis and vagina? He's like, no, dickhead, sex. And then McKinney's like, I gotta get out of here, and then it hard cuts to them just fucking in a shed, and like the little kicking of the soccer ball. This movie is fucking hilarious. But it's not, but I will say it's not for everyone. Like I know Will and I were like, this is right in our Q zone, but forcing Ollie to watch this was like making him watch Barbarian. This is horrifying, I'm sure.
No, this is great. It's just one of those things. I remember once, I mean, it's about 8 years ago, it was on Netflix, and I knew that they were bringing that prequel series out. So I was just sitting there one weekend, and I threw it on for 10 minutes, and I was like, I'm just not in the right frame of mind for this. I wasn't in the right place.
Sure. It's very silly.
Back for it. Yeah. And the thing about it is, it's just so weird, because as I said the same thing to Mrs. It came out in 2001. You know, I mean, I was like, 19, 20. This movie did not make it to the UK. It did not make it to Hong Kong or Singapore. This is not a movie I had ever heard of. You know, which is crazy when you think of the plot. I mean, sorry, the cast. But at the same time, it's a movie that was made for next to nothing, that was sold for next to nothing, that was shown to basically nobody and made almost no money. But it's one of those things, I guess, that as all of these people grew in fame, people were discovering this movie on DVD and things. I mean, so that's what my question to you guys.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you did not see this movie in theaters.
I don't think anyone did.
No.
Yeah. So how did you guys discover this movie? Tell me about that.
Well, for me, I grew up, we were obsessed with, like, David Wayne had a comedy troupe called Stella. It was him, Michael Ian Black, and Michael Showalter. Before that, they had a show on MTV called The State that had all of these people in it.
Really? Okay.
So they used to film these like short films called Stella Shorts that you could see on like YouTube and Crackle and whatever. They were like 5, 6, 11-minute bits, and every single person in it was just a comedy powerhouse. I mean, like Zach Galifianakis, like all of these people were in their shorts. So that's how they got them in this movie. They were all like very tight group of friends. But I think this was like the first like feature David Wayne did. And this is just such a movie that like a friend would have on a DVD or a ripped file, and you'd get your friends together and watch it and get stoned and just laugh your balls off.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Cause I was a huge fan of The State. And I don't think I discovered this movie until I worked at the video store. And then it was like somebody who worked there. That was one of our movie nights. Someone just picked it up and we just watched it. Maybe we watched it while we were after we did inventory, where you had to stay the whole night. And so we just probably watched it in the store. So, but that's definitely when I saw it for the first time, was like 2005 at Hollywood Video.
This is
familiar with The State.
This is kind of the movie that like everyone has sort of an experience watching. You don't just kind of like throw it on. There's always some story behind how you've watched it, which is
right.
Such a treasure to it being like such a cult classic, I think.
Yeah, it seems to be that kind of thing that, it's been like discovered at a sleepover. It's like watched at 1 o'clock in the morning while eating pizza. It seems to have, and it does have that kind of vibe. There's so many like interesting little things about it, because like Mrs. and I were watching and we were spotting little things like they're hanging out and it's like you can see their breath. You're like, holy shit, it's cold. Or like, and I'm seeing it. It rained every day of shooting, and there were scenes that we noticed where like they're inside and you can see it raining outside. The character leaves and it's sunny outside, and I go, it almost adds to the comedy, to be honest.
I think there's a documentary you can watch on like how this film was made, and it's all of them are basically staying at this camp. Like it was like they were at camp and then just decided to make a film around it. It was really cool. But it rained like every day. It must have been miserable, cold. Like you look at those lake scenes, like that must have been brutal.
Yeah, and you've got like Elizabeth Banks, poor thing, in like a bikini half the time, and you've got the other guy in his little shorts and stuff, and like David. Mrs. spent the entire movie just like drooling over David Hyde Pierce. She's like, oh my god, he's so. Oh my god, he's so. Oh, he's such a nerd. God.
There's so many things
so much
that
about
are
science.
The bit when there's a montage in this movie that's maybe there's 2 standout scenes in this movie for me, and we can get into them, but. It's the montage. There's multiple montages. So when we were kids at summer camp, like you were not allowed to leave, but your counselors kind of could. And you would always wonder like what they would do when they would go into town. And there's a bit in this movie that like it gets so progressively insane. Like it starts with them smoking cigarettes, then they're running in, they're getting beer, then they're getting hard liquor, then they're buying a bag of Coke, and then they're shooting heroin, and then they get back. And it's like, it's so great to get away, even if it's just for like an hour.
That's what I mean. Time has no relevance in this movie. That was so funny. That's where like Mrs. was like, what are we watching? And I was like, baby, it's just like, marijuana being the gateway drug. And within 5 minutes, it's like they're in Train Spotting and they're all like,
I can see Zen turning to be like, this is such a Ryan movie.
But like that is one of those ones that and I was like, oh, it's this kind of movie, because I thought it was going to be a bit more of a Dazed and Confused, but with a bit of comedy, as opposed to it's almost like sketch comedy. And it makes no surprise to me when you told me that they all stayed, because I was going to say my analysis of the movie was I think these guys were just staying on location and riffing half the time, and like let's get into this, let's get into that, and I was like. And I think it's to the film's benefit and the film's detriment. I think that's why critically it didn't do very well. But it's got this sort of longevity and this love with people. It's because it's not this kind of movie that everyone's expecting it to be. It's a feature-length sketch comedy thing with all of these amazing talents just having a good time and trying to make this work.
And I think that's why it's so memorable too, because it's like I don't remember the
Mhm.
movie as a whole, but there are bits that I still quote to this day, or gifs that I still send to people that have not seen this movie that make no sense. But I don't care. It's my favorite.
I still like will occasionally just be like State Bird the mosquito.
Yeah. Alexa.
I mean,
like I know this movie front to back. I love it.
you do. The movie was. It's just you're watching it and just you're almost caught up in just the random of it all. It really was. It's like again, there's no anything to anything.
It's just all bits. Like it's all bits, and they all work so well. They don't connect. Like it's him taking the kids on the rafting trip and then cutting back to like, oh my God, they're going down the rapids. And it just, they don't do anything. It's just a camera shot of Joel Truly is like, oh my God, you got to save him. You're doing it. You're doing it. You saved him. And then it just cuts to him like walking back up. And then that whole thing just ends. And it all like goes to the whole movie, like crescendos to this talent show / it's the talent show. And then you have the piece of Space Lab and you have David Hyde Pierce, like building this robot with the indoor kids. And I was the indoor kid and we were in bunk 3. Like it was just, it was very jarring. Like I was like, oh man, finally a movie for my generation.
You do feel like 90% of this movie was being shot with everyone else behind the camera trying not to laugh and ruin the take.
Yeah.
A lot of that felt like that. Joe Latrudio, I loved him. He was great. I love him from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah.
But he had the best glasses and mullet combination.
And he was when it cuts to him riding back on the motorcycle and it's so clearly not him. Hey Neil, what's up? And
obvious stuntman.
Maybe the best cowboy switch ever put to film.
the Texas switch. It's because even Zen was like, wait, and
it's like a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing.
It's so funny. Of just like, the deliberately bad wig on the obviously not character cut back, and it's just this movie was so it's just a bunch of 20-year-olds. It's going out and playing with a camera, and it's like, but they've got our budget. I mean, so they say that it was 1.8 million. It took 3 years to get that money. They marketed that it was 5 million in the hopes of getting a distributor. But Paul Rudd stated he's uncertain if he received any compensation whatsoever for this film.
Yeah.
He deserves all the compensation. That scene where he has to pick up his food.
That's what I'd say. Oh.
God. But it's like his character, I mean, all the arcs in this are great. He's the cool dude with the hot girl, and they're like making out, and she's like, hey, maybe we can go for a walk later. And he's like, God damn it, Katie, you're suffocating me. And he's just like, my butt itches. Like, whatever, baby, so good talking to you. I love you. And then he just walks away and gives her the finger. It's crazy. And she's just like, I love him.
There's some great flipping of the birds in this movie.
Yeah,
there's lots of
the behind the back one. Yeah. Great. It's great.
And then you've got that sort of the weird, not weird. I mean the sweet little Michael Ian Black and Bradley Cooper getting married by the sort of lake sort of thing. Yeah. Then you've got the other two guys who are like, you think are going to go down the whole,
McKinley and Ben, this is for you. And they bring him in like a chaise lounge from Crate and Barrel.
Yeah, right. Because earlier on they're watching it, he's, they're throwing out the F slur and stuff. Yeah. And you're like, it's like every cliche sort of thing. But it turns out this is for you guys.
Totally fine. Yeah, totally fine. And it's, like, having seen like all the Stella shorts prior to this kind of like eases you into it, because a lot of those sketches are like insane, and there's a lot of good dildo work in them. And to see like
some of the best you've seen on camera.
Yeah, it's wild how like none of that shit would ever fly.
What I like about what Will just said there is that he's seen other dildo work off camera that's even better.
Yeah. I'm just, you gotta always stay on top of this stuff. You gotta,
you gotta stay on top.
Do your research.
Yeah. Well, you only notice it when it's real bad.
Exactly.
Best kind of dildo work just blends into the movie. You don't even notice it.
You just gotta stay on top of it.
Adam Driver is phenomenal at it. I'll just say that.
Well, he went to Juilliard, so.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I'm studying dildo work at Juilliard right now. Really?
And I love the will they won't they between Janeane Garofalo and David Hyde Pierce. And my favorite, there's a Wilhelm scream in this movie.
There's a few actually, because they did one of the kids has it sped up Wilhelm as well.
That bit where like the running gag, I think it happens like twice, where a kid does something a bit untoward and Paul Rudd looks at his friend, and then it just cuts to the van and they throw the kid out.
Yeah.
But it was more like
Is
the
it
way
my
I was
turn
reading
yet?
that was like they were witnesses to they lost a kid, and the other kid is a witness, so they throw that kid out just on the side of the road.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. So good.
So
It's so
stupid.
good. It's the same shot twice with the same kid.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Not even an
It's just
attempt
like
to
all these
make something
funny,
new.
like
Yeah.
all these funny, like, because to be fair, this doesn't feel like a parody movie, like a Hot Shots Part 2
It's
that
exactly.
I don't think we've ever referenced before.
Yeah, we've never
Yeah.
talked about that. You're right, Ryan. It's not one, it's not the other. It's like Schrodinger's film, man.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
things at the same time, just depending on whether or not you're looking at it.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever watch The State, like they were like very upfront that they like hated SNL. And so they just did not care for like traditional like sketch comedy like structure.
Mhm.
And so everything they did was to like, what would you expect their like setup and punchline to be? We're just not going to do that. We're going to intentionally do something else. And this whole movie, instead of feeling like, oh, this is a parody of summer comedies, this is like, oh, you like those kind of like summer camp movies? You know, no,
Yeah.
we're not going to do,
Yeah.
we're doing something totally different that
Yeah.
we find funny, and just totally playing against your expectations. That was just what The State was. And
Yeah.
so they carried it over, and They Came Together as the same thing.
Oh,
They
yeah.
We
Came
know
Together
what you're
is the
expecting
same.
as far as parodies
Yeah.
go, but we're not doing that.
Yeah, and Role Models, was definitely his most like theatrical
Traditional.
type of movie. Yeah, like you can see that, and he kind of like held back a little bit, though there are parts that are just, I mean, it's still very much a David Wayne movie. Or if you see the other one is Wanderlust with Paul Rudd and Jennifer Aniston, where they go to like the commune. It's another like that one is like
I never
super
saw that.
silly.
Oh.
It's got the most memorable scene of Paul Rudd talking to himself in the mirror, stoned out of his mind. It's great. But like this to me was like the genesis of that, because it leans so hard into the bizarre, and it was so relatable because I went to a summer camp, so it just kind of fit. It just fit right into that box for me.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Is the only word.
Yeah.
What's crazy to me is it sort of coming out with basically like a, I don't know, its release was essentially a wet fart of a release, but then for it to go on to get the reputation it does, but then it goes on to get a prequel series first day of camp with almost the entire cast, including Bradley Cooper, coming back. Now, at this point, these people are movie stars, come back to do an 8-episode Netflix prequel. And I didn't even know about these guys. And I know you mentioned it on the text thread, but I go, oh, shit. Because they do 10 years later, which is a post-credit scene as well for like 5 seconds, which is quite funny. But they go on to make a whole shit ton of prequels and sequels to this movie, which is...
Yeah, they did the 2 series,
It's insane!
I forget, they did the 10 years later first, and then they did first day of camp after that?
No, it was the other way.
Okay.
Because I remember thinking like that idea was funny.
They never lean into the fact that they're all like 10 years older now, and and they all look completely different, but it's still like very silly and funny, and I love it.
That was what I liked about like just
and the cast even gets insane. They got like Chris Pine, and they get all these like other actors into it. Jason Schwartzman, like
no, I was looking. You got exactly Jason Schwartzman. Got
Michael Cera,
Jordan Peele, Paul Scheer, Weird Al Yankovic, Bruce Greenwood, Rob Hubel, Richard Schiff, Kristen Wiig, John Hamm. Like it's just holy shit.
As the alternate I love that they just built out this universe a bit more.
Right.
Just
they gave an origin story to H. John Benjamin's canned
which
vegetables,
is so insane. It's like this Ninja Turtles-esque thing where he falls into like a pile of goo and just becomes a can of mixed vegetables. He can suck his own dick.
Yeah.
Maybe the best line delivery, if your intro to H. John Benjamin is only like Bob's Burgers or Archer, but hearing him deliver the line, "I can suck my own dick and I do it a lot," is fantastic. It's great. I quote this movie way more than I should in very inappropriate places.
I honestly though, after finishing it, my initial thought was I want to watch this again so I can get some of these quotes down. But then like I feel like I'm gonna have to watch all 16 episodes of the prequel sequels as well.
And you have to watch them in order. You have to watch, like recommending to people out there, if you haven't seen this movie, you have to watch the movie first. Then first day of camp, then 10 years later, like just as it came out, because it's so fucking silly that I think if you watch it in like chronological order, it just wouldn't have the same impact.
Yeah, no, it's so much funnier when they're like, "Oh, we're 15," and they're like clearly 30 years old. It's like,
Yeah.
Well, that's
so
the thing about it, is that's what's so wacky about it, is when they make the first movie, they are the age that they joke about being in 10 years. Can you imagine we'll be like mid-20s? By the time they get to doing the prequel, where they're also supposed to be 16, they're now in their late 30s, 40s. And when they do 10 years later, they're 15 years older than they would be 10 years later. You're just like, none of this makes any sense, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's yeah, and I would say I don't know how I feel. I didn't finish the 10 years later one, but
it doesn't hit the same as the movie, you know.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite joke one of my favorite jokes in the movie is when they're like, you know, in 10 years we should all meet up again, and that Michael Ian Black's like, I got a thing, I've moved it twice, I can't.
Oh, you just have a trapper keeper full of appointments?
Yeah.
No, I just have, you know, I got a thing, I moved it twice, and I can't move it again.
Can't do it again. Yeah.
It's just, and so many of these guys and girls turn up in everything for the next 20 years. It is wild. I mean, to think that if you tried to make that movie like with those people who they are now,
it's nuts.
Budget it would require just to get them as actors.
Yeah. I mean, even in the TV show, it was like really hard to get them all back. Like for everyone wanted to do it, but it was like just scheduling things. I think Bradley Cooper, they got him for like 2 days.
Yeah, wasn't he? So I think when was in the prequel, or no, I think it was in the prequel. They couldn't get him, so he was like a DJ or something. We always had a mask on.
Oh, that was like at the end of the series. Yeah, where he's like, "Hey guys, it's me."
Yeah, and then
yeah.
But you're right. They couldn't get everyone together because everyone's like, you know, scattered, and they're all super fucking famous now, or most of them are. And like the way they had to digitally film it and like edit them together to make it look like they were all in the same room was actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, but like I was saying, is weirdly enough, that feels very similar to the first movie because, like I said, about an hour in,
I didn't even think about
very apparent that none of them were around at the same time, or they're just like, all right, we're going to shoot for 2 days with these guys. You guys go off and do something, you know, because they're just completely separate. You're never getting any real crossover after the initial introduction of characters kind of thing. And I was like, oh my God, this movie was probably made with duct tape and it cost about, you know,
it's so good.
25 cents a day.
The scene where Victor's on the phone and they're trying to track his location and they run through the infirmary and they're like, the phone, where's the fucking phone? And they're just smashing everything for no reason. It's just, there's like these little vignettes, and there's this, I think it's also in the montage. There's a cut where it's Janine Garofalo and David Hyde Pierce in the library, and she's reading a book on like astrophysics, and he's reading like the two sections say it's like camp directing and astrophysics. And
they have that conversation immediately after.
Other favorite running gag is the one sound effect that they use for something smashing.
the pot it's cracking
great.
Everything. Yeah.
God, David Hyde Pierce screaming at Janine Garofalo. And she's like, I think it'd be great. I said no. It's great. I can just quote this nonstop, and I don't want this podcast to devolve into that. But
welcome to the new podcast, Quote-a-thon with Ryan and Will. We're going to go through the entire thing. Well, actually, I could probably do the same for the next 2 movies. I mean, look, so I would say to those of you listening, watch it with friends, watch it while drinking. If it's legal in your state, or even if it's not. Okay. Get a joint, get stoned, and watch this movie with your buddies, because there's going to be a ridiculous amount of giggling. And like Ryan says, you're going to figure out the person in your friend group that you're not really friends with. Because they're going to be the person that just stops watching, walks to the other room. This isn't funny.
And then it'll just smash cut to you throwing them out of a van on the side of the road.
But let's segue over. Let's move on from Red Hot American Summer. Let's go to the I'd almost say the movie with even the biggest heart. Let's go to your movie, Will. I want to talk The Iron Giant. That movie is a treasure to me.
Yeah, it's a perfect film.
You know what really bothers me, and it drives me up the wall, is that I've been trying. So Mrs., I think, watched it once, and she doesn't watch it. She never wants to watch it again, and I think it's because she half misremembers it as being sad, because it does have a heartfelt moment, but it still gives you it gives you a happy ending. Hashtag no spoilers. But like The Iron Giant for me is one of the best constructed movies. It's why when Brad Bird, you know, I heard he was going to do The Incredibles, and I heard, you know, anytime I hear Brad Bird's name for decades after is because of The Iron Giant, going, that guy gets movies. That
Yeah.
guy knows movies.
Yeah, he knows heart and character for sure.
And that's the definition. And it just wastes no time. This movie is efficient. Movie starts. You know it's 1950s because Sputnik goes by. Not 2 seconds after Sputnik goes by, something comes flying down from space. Not 2 seconds after that, we're in Maine on the water. There's a guy. He's in the boat. The boat gets. He's in danger. Now we've met the robot. Smash cut to we're introducing our characters. It's in 3 minutes. Have set the time, the place, what's going on. All right, let's go to the races and have a great time at the movies. And I'm like, we did have a good time at the movies, and this movie flopped.
Which is crazy, yeah, because this is also such a cult hit. Like, people adore this film.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's honestly, it's a theme for all of the movies we chose. Movies that flopped when it came out, movies that people then discovered again when it sort of came on a DVD, and movies that now, 20 plus years later, are still regarded as absolute treasures. What is this about Maine? Maine, you were an underrated state. Yeah. You've got some great movies.
I mean, up until last week, I didn't even know that it was a state. So shame on me. Sorry, Mainites. Didn't know you were a thing.
Actually, I was some map I saw on Reddit which was breaking down the like how do you describe someone, sort of Oregonian, Californian, or or so for ER ending or ending and stuff like that. I wonder, are they Mainites? Because that would be hilarious.
That would be pretty great.
Are they just Mainers?
Mainers, yeah.
Mainers.
I don't like that.
All right, so the plot of The Iron Giant, if you haven't seen this movie, pause the podcast and watch this movie because it's amazing.
Yeah.
Watch it with your children, get ready to have a good old cry and also a big old smile at the same time, is that Vin Diesel in Too Fast, Too Furious, Vin Diesel is a giant robot that falls from space. And then the Eli Marienthal plays this young boy, Hogarth Hughes.
What an insane name.
Yeah, but inspired by Ted Hughes that wrote the original. Is just a young boy, lives in Maine during the 1950s. You know, we've got that great bit when they're at school and they've got in the background while all the kids are talking about, you heard the rumor about this thing and the boat crashing and the alien, you've got the duck and cover animated, like the movie playing. Like, it always makes me think of South Park, the duck and cover.
The duck and cover, sure.
Oh, no, duck and cover! And then just everyone dies.
The animation of the little child under a table and the nuclear bomb falling on it, and the table is just totally fine.
Yeah, and like the whole world is destroyed, but there's this thing, and then there's the table. Yeah, it is. So what happens is it's Ryan. If you've seen the movie E.T., you've seen the Iron Giant in a way, but essentially is that Hogarth's mum, Jennifer Aniston, she works at the diner. So she's working busy. Like she's a single mum. Dad's not around. So he's kind of left to his own devices. And there's just sort of one night where he's trying to watch TV. I love it, actually. He's on the phone and mum's like, so don't stay up late. No scary movies. Get your food. And he's like, sure, mom. And he's like, Twinkies, builds a fort. He's just spraying stuff into it while watching. This movie, the movie within the movie, is one of my favorite jokes because
so good.
The male actor is terrible.
God, what a way to waste a perfectly good brain.
And he's like, let's go back to my place for maybe a nightcap. And
fantastic. I almost want to see that movie.
Definitely. Oh yeah. Sure.
It is really reflective of. I remember watching behind the scenes, and I was listening to the commentary for The Incredibles while watching The Incredibles, and because that's how it works. Everyone knows how that fucking works. I was watching the movie at the same time as I was watching the commentary. Wild, right? But there's a bit where Brad Bird was talking about the Incredible car pulls up in front of a church where Mr. Incredible is supposed to be getting married. It is in the movie for 3 frames. Like it's like the car. It's 1.5 seconds, and Brad Bird is talking about. I can't tell you the number of meetings, the number of times they got together, the different sketches that were brought together. What is this church going to look like? And you see it on screen for not even a full second. And it's that kind of, you just feel the love and attention to detail in this movie for every tiny little detail.
Yeah, every frame.
it's been thought out of, and it's dripping with talent. And when you kind of get into the how it was made, is that Brad Bird was very much a part of it, and it was, instead of it just being you do one character like the old Disney way, it's more like you guys do this part of the movie, you do this part of the movie. It was very collaborative. They'd be screening it, he'd be drawing on the screen, going, "How about this?" And it apparently is just like, it was the definition of a leader, I think, as Brad Bird really inspired everybody involved. It was like on a shoestring in a way, and getting even students involved to create this just gem of a movie, an absolute gem.
Yeah.
How did you guys see this movie the first time? Do you guys remember?
I really don't. I definitely maybe saw it on like HBO or something. It wasn't like going out of my way to see it, so I really don't remember. But yeah.
Well, what about you, buddy?
I think this was definitely like Hollywood Video like rental, like once again for me, seeing it, because I did not see this in theaters the first time. But
people weren't talking about it the same way that we are now. Like,
no, I
don't
think
know,
I had saw it in anticipation because maybe Incredibles, the first one, was coming out, and someone said like, "Oh, this is the same director." So I think maybe that's why I'd watched it first. But it was, I mean, it's a movie that just 100% speaks to me. You put a giant robot in a movie, I'm gonna watch your movie.
It's Jennifer Aniston
also,
for me.
Yeah, Jennifer Aniston is also,
I was a huge Harry Connick Jr. fan too.
I was about to say, who's not a Connick Jr. head here?
He's so good in this movie. Like,
he's great
as like the hip,
beatnik.
Cool, the beatnik. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
the phrase.
I was introduced to Harry Connick Jr. in Memphis Belle, which is one of my favorite movies ever made, and he was fantastic in that movie. That's why I knew who he was. And then that's what I mean. But everybody in this movie is perfect. The casting, like Jennifer Aniston, is like, people I often find underestimate how good Jennifer Aniston is. She's very funny. She's a very good actress. I think she's extraordinarily talented, and it's like, being sort of in Friends, but she was great. She's great in this movie. Christopher McDonald, like we talked about, basically Shooter, is like one of my favorite line deliveries of the whole movie, is where he's, so essentially because of what's happened, so the guy gets rescued at the beginning of the movie, and he says he's called the government. So the government sends a guy, and the guy they send is Shooter McGavin, and he comes down to investigate, and he's almost just not bothered about things, but he's like talking about big robot, whatever. Gets in his car, puts the thing down. Oh my God! It's that whole, like, he's in the middle of this kind of like muttering to himself, and then suddenly he realizes half his car has been bitten off.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's when I was like, man. Same thing as when Hogarth is praying. It was like, so Jennifer Aniston, like his mom is like, all right, do you want to do the prayer? And he's like, stop, Satan. Because in the background, the giant robot hand is behind mum. And so he's trying to keep mum's attention, while at the same time, but go away from him.
His delivery of these lines and the animation on top of it, and just the bit with him enjoying coffee for the first time and him just like rapid fire.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's no surprise that child is, I've done voice acting, I've done voiceover and stuff like that. It is hard. And I would have bet, watching it, that Brad Bird was like, well, let's just shoot the scenes like on a video camera for real. And just get the guys to act it out, because that's how everybody is doing the voice acting. In no way does it feel like what it really is. Every time you're voice acting, you got I'm always there. You haven't shaved. You're wearing whatever. You got your hat backwards, and you're just like talking into a mic and just going all crazy. But in this case, like I said, that kid, what I don't know how they discovered him. What lottery they won to win that, because he is such a key part of why this movie's amazing.
This would be such a great, like, Netflix does the movies that made us. Just to see how they kind of did all that. It feels like that kind of movie, like
I would love to see some more. I mean, like, they were surprised. So the Iron Giant was a commercial failure upon release, but it was, in a way, a shock, because it had scored the highest for Warner Brothers, I believe. But it's the highest tested movie they'd had for 15 years. But they hadn't prepped a marketing. They hadn't prepped any like tie-ins. There was no like, Iron Giant burger or this, that, and the other, the toys. And so
it's just a piece of metal.
Yeah. You just
do they
go to
ever
McDonald's, get a bunch
establish
of scrap metal.
Did they ever establish why he just eats metal?
Because it's awesome.
Because he has a nuclear reactor inside him, right? And he requires to, I don't know, who cares? He's a big robot thing that
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Skip.
But yeah, actually, it's incredible because I don't remember there being like I don't remember any trailers. I don't remember there being any posters. I do not remember.
And this
any
must have
press
come
about this movie.
out sandwiched between some major, like some other heavy hitters that it just kind of.
They say the studio spent all of the attention, marketing, and money on Wild Wild West instead.
Oh, well, never mind.
that-
Good money well spent then.
Has survived the test of time.
I'm still waiting for a Wild Wild West 10 years later.
Return of the giant mechanical spider.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, Iron Giant versus the Spider. I mean, come on, guys.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I mean, but
Get
like
Kevin
so
Kline back.
it's got a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. Its audience score is like 97%. It's just everyone that's ever seen it is just like this. It's like a perfect movie.
Yeah,
it is like the music is perfect.
So
It's a wonderful, like say, like the whole sort of interplay. So the fun little thing about it is like, you know, when we first meet the robot, he's almost like a bit of like a scared kid because he's got this little bump on his head. He's got the, you know, and like so, and then Hogarth, you know, sort of finds the robot. Because like Ryan was saying, it eats a metal. It starts eating like a transformer,
and it almost like another
Optimus Prime.
But also in like another, like we keep mentioning, like ET or like a Spielberg thing. Like you have that little bit. I mean, it's not really scary, but you have that kind of bit of horror where he goes up onto the roof because the cable's not working and he sees the lights go out like flickering in the distance, and he goes to find this robot, and it's kind of dark. You don't know what's going to happen, but because it is a kids and like an animated film.
Thank you for reminding
that. Like you get that bit of what's going to happen, that mystery.
The lighting in this, an animated movie, is exceptional.
Yeah.
Like bits with the torch and suddenly it's pointing at camera and the way things are backlit at times. It's astounding.
You don't think about because it looks so good.
Yeah.
Like you just don't, you know.
But yeah, you're totally right. There's that bit where, you know, Hogarth is like, so yeah, his TV aerial's been bitten off. And then you see this kind of like trail of destruction leading into the forest, and he puts on his helmet and he gets his BB gun and he straps his thing off and he's like salutes himself in the mirror and he goes running off into the forest. And you're like, you know, even me, like the kid in me and the dad in me is going, oh dude, that's really dangerous. What are you doing?
Well, it was the 50s, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Exactly. Is it?
Yeah,
oh, it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah. We're scared of Russians right now, which is fine. But yeah, so it's kind of like, but Hogarth ends up sort of saving the Iron Giant who's being electrified. And unfortunately, there is a really big on-off switch, which is like great. But it's like, you know, it's an animated movie. But, you know, Hogarth turns it off, and that's so now they've become buddies. And it becomes that kind of, you know, you see it in other movies. It's like, oh my goodness, I've got my own robot. It's Terminator 2.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a
like
boy and his dog. It's that like classic thing. Yeah.
I've got my own Terminator right now. Oh my goodness. And so instead of like, you know, wanting to tear things up or anything, you've just got this kid who doesn't have a dad, who's home alone, who just wants a friend. And so his friend is a 50-foot tall alien robot that they just want to hang out. And it's so great that it plays up this sort of like this way. It stays this movie for like an hour. You've got, okay, it's much like E.T., we're trying to hide him from the government. And then you get that fascinating, suddenly out of nowhere twist where they've done it. They've almost finished the movie as it's set up. He's outwitted the government guy who's been living in his house. One of my favorites is, where are you going, sport? Where are you going, champ? What are you doing? It's one of my favorite bits. He's teamed up with
Harry Connick Jr.
Harry Connick Jr., thank you. To like hide him at the scrapyard. He's now a piece of art. The military's come out and it's like, all right, guys, we're done. Let's go. So everything's relaxed. The movie is over. Hogarth's playing games and he points a toy gun at the robot and suddenly his eyes go red. And then suddenly it activates this defense mechanism. And that's when the movie takes this twist. It's such a brilliant twist.
Yeah.
Where like, you know, you've just been so caught up in the of it all. And then suddenly it gets
he is a Terminator from Terminator 1.
you discover what he was built for.
Right.
You know,
which is quite the twist. You're like, oh right, this was the 50s. He's a giant fucking weapon.
Yeah. And suddenly it becomes all about fear. Fear of destruction, fear of the Soviets, this whole like are we all gonna die? Everybody's living under this feeling of, is the bomb gonna drop? And we remember that's that premise, that's that setup from the first shot, Sputnik. You know what I mean? It's just such a brilliantly constructed movie. I mean, like, yeah, Will, you know, you and our resident just movie absolute nerd. Like, how do you feel about like where it goes from that point? Because it's like it gets so almost away dark, doesn't it?
It does, but not in a way that's like off-putting. And you know, even when it gets kind of scary and intimidating, it's not like in a way that would like really frighten children. Because I always have the theory that kids like to be scared a little bit, and I think modern movies have pulled away from that. I think this is just the right amount of when, you know, at the beginning when he's like chewing on the power transformers, that's just scary enough for kids to like get them excited.
He's like a puppy, you know?
Yeah.
Like
And I really think like one thing Brad Bird is really good at, because he started off in The Simpsons. He's, you know, someone who's been like really understands story structure and how it's supposed to play out, even in his movies that aren't fantastic, like Tomorrowland. Structurally, they're always really sound. And I think that's one of the things that comes across in this film is, like you said, there's no fat, there's no wasted moment, and everything is built is supporting the theme of making the choice not to be a weapon, and setting it in the era of like Soviet fear is like the best way to illustrate like that kind of point.
Yeah, you couldn't set this movie in like a different timeline. You know, it would have to be. It just the reason it works so well is because it's set in that Soviet fear era period. You know,
we also get, and thank you for reminding me, Will. But it's like the this movie is a prequel to Bambi, because we see what happened to Bambi's dad. Strangely enough, the same thing that happened to Bambi's mum. But we get that moment of Hogarth teaches the robot one thing. Teaches what? Teaches firstly about that. No, that it's dead. It's dead. It's not coming back. That's what guns do.
But also that seems heartbreaking. Yeah.
But also the idea of what a soul is. And it's such a, just like, you know, it makes my heart hurt just thinking about it. But it's Hogarth, this little kid who's been forced to kind of grow up a bit, who's got this almost fatherly role to this massive robot, teaching this robot about a soul. And then you kind of sort of like, you have it later on where the robot doesn't want to be playing the big evil robot. He wants to be Superman. And you kind of get that bit where...
I wore this completely by accident. I didn't even intend to.
So Will is wearing a Superman t-shirt just in case you want to listen to this podcast. Is Hogarth where he explains you have a soul because you think about things. It's such a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and that's that theme really carries through the whole, you know, making the choice to be something else. And the fact that the Iron Giant learns, you know, about life and death and why it's important, and that ending gets me every single time.
Oh my god!
Yeah. It's crazy that wasn't the original ending. That the robot was going to become his father and marry his mother.
Yeah, which, you know what, I would have been for, but I think ultimately
he was going to wear John Connor's skin, right? It was,
it was going to be a much darker movie. But I mean, Brad Bird, you know, he wrote this film because his sister was murdered, and that was I believe that's it. She died. A gun was involved. I forget if it was a murder or something else, but like that was something that really affected him, and that's what this movie was kind of like a response to. Is that's why it's an anti-gun film.
Yeah. Well, you know, interesting you should say that, because Ted Hughes, the poet that wrote The Iron Giant, wrote the book, wrote the novel to comfort his children in the wake of Sylvia Plath, their mother's suicide.
Oh.
So this whole, like, that's crazy. I didn't know that, Will, but that is an amazing sort of like overlap of sort of explaining death to children, but also just explaining to them like as adults, but also explaining the value of life and everything else. Because when it comes together, and like, so all these little things that have been planted throughout the movie, once we get to that sort of twist that the robot's kind of like a bit of a gun, he almost kills Hogarth in an automatic response, and so he kind of panics, runs away, ends up saving some children in the town. So the town's like, oh my goodness, this giant robot is here to help us. But that's when the military sees him, they start attacking. And in that situation, Hogarth gets unconscious, but the robot thinks he's dead, and he gets that rage response, and he starts attacking, and it's very A-Team. One is that you always see people like running away from the tanks before they explode and stuff like that, so you know he doesn't hit anybody. But also like these incredible weapons, like that spinning thing, and he goes, ding, 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 you know, and it's sends things out. But it's like the robot is on a rampage because he's lost the only person he cares about.
Yeah.
And it's going wild. Yeah. But you get that final crazy twist because it's like Christopher McDonald just grabs the thing, is launched the missile now. I remember watching the movie going, oh no. Because they launched a nuclear missile at this small town in Maine. I mean, the way it's shot, it's like almost old school Bond. You know, you've got that missile going up in the distance. You know, and then you have this the sirens go off. And I remember watching the movie and go, oh my God, what are we gonna do? Everyone's gonna die.
Yeah,
it's like they can't go anywhere. There's nowhere they can go in enough time.
There's not enough tables for them to get under.
And you have that moment of like, I mean, watching the movie again and thinking about it when I first watched it, thinking about it as a dad going, I mean, what do you say to your children? It says, all right, well, look, I love you, give me a hug, but we've got 3 minutes to live kind of thing. And that's when you get maybe the best character moment ever of, you know, we can roast Vin Diesel for whatever you want to say. It's basically his introduction to being Groot and doing a voice, but him saying I'm Superman along with the character image, I'm fucking crying right now.
Yeah.
He goes face first into a nuclear weapon.
It's the part where he like, you know, because earlier in the film, Hogarth is like, you know, shouting at the Iron Giant. He's like, you know, I go, you stay, no following. You know, he's saying like that. When the Iron Giant repeats that to him, that's when I totally lose it.
I actually am crying.
Oh my God.
I know now why you cry.
Yeah.
This movie is Terminator 2, isn't it? Shit.
See, that's why it's my favorite. Yeah.
But there's, I mean, you keep saying like there's so much heart to this movie, and it's so sweet and endearing, and it just looks so good. It is a perfect film.
Yeah. I can't believe I'm actually crying right now. But this is what drives me crazy, because it's the movie that if you gave me like the choice, I would gather my whole family. Like it's, you know, it's a Christmas movie. I'm doing it. I'm just making the family. I'm forcing Mrs. We're watching it. I'm getting my children. We're sitting down. We're having popcorn and we're watching this goddamn movie because it is a treasure.
So good. Yeah. Perfect film.
Much like my movie. Let's talk The Shawshank Redemption. This is like, so before we start recording, like Ryan was like, well, that was a good cry. You know, like, you're going to cry during a movie. Is The Shawshank Redemption is another perfect movie. I wanted to talk about this movie because for me, I've got my first watch story of this movie is one of my favorites. And I think is the reason that I became that guy that Ryan talks about is like knowing nothing. Going into a movie, no trailers, no nothing, is the best way to watch a movie, to be wowed by something. Yeah. Because The Shawshank Redemption, it stars Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman, Bob Gunton as the warden. Incredible, this defining character by Clancy Brown. That's all, every time I see him, I just go,
I mean, okay, there's something about him in this movie that is deeply terrifying. Like,
from the moment.
Yeah, and you know, and
you fat just barrel of monkey spunk. He's the best bunch of insults ever.
Yeah.
He's like, he's even scarier in this movie than he is in Highlander, where he's got the cut like net across his neck, and he's an immortal murderer, and like he's scarier in this movie.
But
and then he goes on to be the sheriff of that other shitty movie you made us watch. Homefront.
Hold on, I need to go on a quick tangent because I gotta apologize to Ollie. I just saw Silent Night, the new John Woo action movie.
Oh, boy.
Silent Night makes Homefront look like the Matrix. Oh my God. Homefront shot up 800 spots in my top action movie list.
It's such a bummer because the trailer looks so cool.
God, it's
cool premise.
If I can make one movie recommendation, never ever see Silent Night. You will never get that time back. One of the worst action movies I've ever seen.
Ryan and I are on another text thread with some of the other RTM like camera guys and stuff. And I was telling him because like he just Adam, Adam, he just saw Godzilla -1, which you said was incredible as well.
So
And
good.
I just said to him, I said, by the way,
Yeah.
apparently
Oh, man.
Silent Night is an abortion. And he said, oh, that's sad. I go, don't do it. If Will says it's that bad, it must be bad.
Yeah,
So
and
bad.
and not in like a so bad it's good kind of way, like a sudden death, like.
And it's so bad where I'm like, okay, John Woo, you can retire from filmmaking.
Such a
Please
bummer.
don't make another movie.
Yeah,
At least they made a movie where Joel Kinnaman doesn't speak.
I like Joel Kinnaman.
I know, I do too.
I like him too, but man, that guy has rough luck with movies.
Ooh, and Altered Carbon.
No, dude, I liked Altered Carbon. But also, no, what's the Apple Plus alternate reality space? For All Mankind. If you guys are For All Mankind, get on that.
I need to. That's Ronald D. Moore. That's sci-fi. I need to watch it. Yeah.
It's brilliant. I mean, the first season was brilliant, but I want to see every season's been great, but I really loved it. I say it's not a spoiler. It's the premise of the movie is just what if one massive thing in history in the space race happened slightly differently. And it creates this alternate timeline that goes from the 1960s through where we are to where we are now. But it goes, what if the space race went differently? What if then America got scared, kind of like in the Iron Giant, and kept investing in the space race? Where would we be? Fascinating, like just an alternate history.
And to clarify, that's the plot of Godzilla -1?
That's the plot of Godzilla -1.
Okay, great.
Godzilla on the moon.
But we'll get back to the Shawshank Redemption. The Shawshank.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it truly was Shawshank Redemption.
Now the thing
and if
about
you don't
Shawshank,
get that reference, my God.
The thing about Shawshank is, like we were saying, just like the other movies, a great movie that just flopped. It came out, nobody saw it. It went to the Oscars and it got a whole bunch of nominations and things like that. But it was just like one of those movies that no one saw. I remember I think it was 95, 96. I remember I was in this house. I was in Cubit, which is the name of one of the houses of my boarding school, because I went to a posh boarding school. But I remember I was sitting in this guy's room and there was the cover of this sort of like VHS or something. It's like, oh, it was the soundtrack maybe of the Shawshank. And it's, yeah, exactly. It's Tim Robbins, like, standing in the rain, which, by the way, is also my favorite internet joke, where they've taken that and it just says bukkake. The best internet joke I've ever seen in my entire life. It's still, I've never laughed so hard at a visual joke ever in my life. But
you just ruined bukkakes for me.
I'm sorry.
By the way, my mom listens to all these. Mom, do not Google this.
Oh God.
Just leave this a mystery.
It's all right.
Please.
She won't be able to spell it. It's fine. Hey, Alexa, what's a bukkake? No.
What's bukkake?
To get back to the Shawshank, is that the guys in the room were talking about what a great movie it was, and I was like, okay, so, and I still hadn't seen. I mean, the thing is, it had been a movie that I'm an Xennial, right? So I'm more Gen X than Millennial, but I grew up in a household where we had 150 VHS tapes, and 130 of those were blank. And we'd recorded stuff off TV. We'd recorded movies. We'd jump up and pause it for commercials. That's how I watched The Goonies, how I watched Back to the Future and stuff like that.
So you're a criminal.
Yes. Yes, I pirated everything. But in the 80s, that's how you did. But I remember there was one summer, my older brother wasn't around. So I think he was probably at boarding school. So I wonder, I'm trying to figure out my age, but I'm a teenager. It's late at night. It's like, so I know I don't have to go to bed. It's about 11 at night. I have watched every single VHS. I've watched Smoking the Bandit. I've watched them all. And I've always skipped over this thing called The Shawshank Redemption. I've always looked at it and I go, I don't know what this is. But it was just this one night. Okay, I guess I'm going to put the only VHS I haven't seen on, and I put it in. And I've never had a movie experience like it. I've never had it. That's why I love to watch The Shawshank Redemption, because every time I do, I get the same experience of, holy shit, the moment where, the twist happens, my mind will, because I was so convinced that it was, well, I guess this is when my main character is going to die. So before we get into the movie, again, it's a question I always like to ask. What was your introduction to this movie?
I feel like this was I'm sure I saw this on cable or DVD or something, but like I feel like this was, maybe I'm misremembering, but I feel like this was like the very first like prestige film I really remember seeing that was like an adult movie that wasn't like the schlocky action or shit I would normally watch, like your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or like
other Oscar-winning movies. Yes.
But yeah, this was like, it's so funny you say that this movie flopped, but I remember it being like, I for some reason remember it being this like Oscar-winning, award-winning film. And
That's
maybe it
how
was, I don't know, like
everybody remembers this movie as like, oh, well, the classic Oscar movie is Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
And like, this is a movie everybody assumes won all the awards. And it's just thought of today. But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I had kind of the same experience. I think I saw it. It was definitely my parents rented it. I definitely saw it like in VHS, watching it with my parents. So that's definitely how I saw it the first time. And yeah, it struck me as like, because at that time I was like 9, I think, maybe 9, 10. I can't remember when we rented it. But it was one of the first like, oh, this is like a grown-up movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, thank you. Not an adult movie, a grown-up movie. Yes.
No, that's the bukkake one that we were talking
about. Again, Mom, do not look any of this.
The Shawshank Redemption. That's the one. Write that down.
Somebody driver's great in that one.
Oh God.
But no,
we've done it again. We've ruined one of Ollie's favorite movies.
Yeah, right. It's all right. You can't ruin this movie. To me, it's perfect.
So I don't intend to. It is perfect.
So you haven't seen The Shawshank Redemption. There is going to be a spoiler in this, but you probably heard about it anyway. But it does involve the story of Tim Robbins playing Andy Dufresne, who in the first few minutes we discover as he's in court, and we're seeing a kind of flashback.
Yeah.
Is sent to prison. Yeah, quite the cold open. It's quite dramatic. And it's all his eyes as well. He's just like these blue eyes. Is convicted and sent to prison for a double murder, where he's been accused of and found guilty of killing his wife and her lover in a fit of jealous rage. We do see him sitting outside the house. We do see him with a loaded gun. We do see him drunk. We don't see what happened. But let's be honest, you do go into the movie for the first hour assuming he's guilty.
I was going to ask you guys if you feel like rewatching this. I mean, it's hard, but your first time, like thinking whether or not he actually did it is so, the way it's filmed is so ambiguous that you really don't know until much later in the film.
No, so I do remember. I remember everything. So I know to begin with that I'm like, I guess he's kind of done it. But you also kind of like him. Your narrator is Red, Morgan Freeman, who is the guy that can get you anything in prison. And it's wild that it's. You're right, Ryan. I think it's the same as you guys said, is that it's the most like, wow, movies are so wow. The prestige of it, the shots of it. It's because it's the Roger Deakins of it.
Yeah.
It's just the beauty of it. And it's like the sweeping shots and over, and it's shot in a prison. It's like, so obviously you've got these shots that go up the road and up and over, and you've got all the extras inside. It's like, it's massive. You get the shots of, it's a shot that's always in my head, is that he's going into the prison. And he's looking up, and you get almost the POV of this massive sort of wall, and he goes into it, and everything from that point becomes dark. Like it just you're like, oh my God.
Or that the shot for me is when, we'll get to it later, when they're on the roof and Clancy Brown goes to throw him off, that shot of it panning down and then up, like it's crazy.
How are they?
It looked like he's really dangling Tim Robbins.
That's the thing. I go, how are they? Are they digitally removing wires? There's no way they did that for real, right? Because I'm watching the same thing. I think that every time I do that show.
Yeah, it's so cool.
But yeah, is Tim Robbins, is Andy Dufresne, is go to prison, and it does not go well. There's charm to it, and he's got this, like I said, Red, Morgan Freeman doing his amazing voiceover, as he does with penguins,
doing his best James Earl Jones. Sure.
But is telling this story, and it's a story filled with heart, but it's also so much tragedy and so much. It's scary. We get one of the other prisoners beaten to death the first night by Clancy Brown. So there's our stakes. We've got this terrifying warden in Bob Gunton, who's the most terrifying because he's, I believe in two things: discipline and the Bible. Put your faith in God, but your ass belongs to me. I'm like, okay. here we go. And then within the first 40 minutes, now our main character is being targeted by the bull queers, as they are described in it, by an absolute the guy. And every time I see that actor in movies, I'm always like, oh, you bastard.
He's like, they're not gay. They're not gay either. You gotta be human to be.
You need to
gotta
be
be human
human.
first, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, played by maybe one of the most terrifying actors. Like
that's what I mean. He turns up in movies all the time. Sometimes he's really nice and stuff. He turns up in movies, and I'm always like, oh,
Yeah.
that guy scares the shit out of me. And you're like, this is kind of going on, and it's just this. It's not a slog, but it is. As in, you're feeling so bad for Andy, and but you then get into the routine of prison. Then Andy starts figuring out prison because he was a banker, and so kind of like you were saying, Ryan, there's this moment where he kind of wins over the guards, even the scariest guard of them all, by overhearing this thing about money, and he goes, "Do you trust your wife?" Or he almost gets killed by it, but he's like, I can get you all that money tax free. Suddenly he starts doing all of the tax returns for the guards, and that's when they start protecting him. That's when you get one of the most satisfying moments in the movie.
Oh yeah.
This bad guy that we hate beats to almost death an even worse guy. And so you're like, you're okay, Clancy Brown.
He'll never walk again, and he's been drinking, eating food from a straw. Like, oof.
Yeah, you enjoy every second of that beating.
Yeah. And you don't even really see it. Like, it's what you don't see that makes it.
You just see him dragged into his cell.
It's scary, isn't it?
Yikes.
But you have no sympathy. You have no sympathy whatsoever.
Another thing that's insane about this movie is what you don't even clock is the passage of time. Like the timeline of this is over a span of like 20 some odd years.
20 years, yeah.
It doesn't feel like that. Like you see, the color of his hair change here and there, but
you see them all aging. Yeah.
Yeah, a bit, but it still doesn't feel like that long.
But that's the point, I think. Is
definitely.
Once you get into prison, it's just pressure and time. It's all about routine.
Yeah.
You're doing the same thing over and over again. And that's why, like, suddenly, you've got, James Whitmore returning for the third time, I think, to this podcast from them, exclamation mark, as Brooks.
Just such a heartbreaking character too.
Like, yeah, he's been there 50 years. And it's like, that's kind of what it is that it's just.
He's been institutionalized. Like he says that for the, you get so used to you get so used to these walls and these bars and everything that anything outside becomes scary.
It's like, you're afraid of them, then you get used to them, then you need them.
Yeah.
It's like, 50 years, guys.
And it's still relevant to the prison system today. Like it's the way people are treated, and it's horrible. Like,
yeah, the fact that it's really no better today is just horrible.
I mean, America is a terrifying place because you guys have for-profit prisons.
Yeah.
So they find
what could go wrong?
You find ways to lock people up, which is absolutely wild. But
that's also a whole thing in this movie is that, why do we need the money for a library when we just build more walls, more bars, and get more people in here
and more balls.
More balls.
But this is kind of what I mean. It's like it's. I think that's why I've always like Frank Darabont. Whenever I hear his name, I always go wow. But I think, and I'm watching this movie, and it's the delicate balance of we're putting a guy in prison. It's a prison movie, as far as you know, when you go in. There's horrifying things that are happening, but you also get this sense of okay, and it is okay, and you're along for the ride. You're not enjoying it, but you're not enjoying it. You're invested. You're so invested.
There's some unease to it too, because exactly. Oh yes.
And it's just it's so you watch it, and it's like you say, like I said, perfect movie about Iron Giant. I consider the same thing about Shawshank Redemption is that here's this teenage me watching this at 11 p.m. on VHS, and I'm watching again, and I'm going down that same memory route, and it's like within the first 5 minutes you're invested. Within the first 15 minutes you're all in. Yeah, it's telling a story that's in a way.
This movie flies too. I mean, it's paced so well, and like just when you start to get comfortable in this routine of the way they're kind of revealing information and things to you, you get a new character that shows up, and then he's kind of the allegory to like the fresh fish who becomes friendly with them, and then you get this insane reveal that he was a cellmate with
Yeah, so Jill
That's fucking
Bellows.
crazy.
Is
Yeah.
it Jill
Oh,
or Gil? I'm pretty sure it's
don't
maybe
know.
it's Jill's Gil, but we all know him from Ally McBeal. That's how you recognize him as Ally
I know him as the Elvis guy from this movie.
McBeal. But he turns
That's right.
out,
I forgot about Ally McBeal's. Like
yeah.
now, because I was just rewatched it this morning, and I was like, where is he from?
Oh,
Yeah,
I thought
he
you were
was-
just rewatching Ally McBeal this morning.
It's just I wanted to see that CGI dancing
Yeah.
baby.
Will, just so you know at home, Will does a separate Ally McBeal podcast.
Yes, the McBeal Heads podcast. Peter McNichols, my other co-host.
Oh
I
shit!
just ask him Ghostbusters 2 questions.
Fuck yeah.
But it's kind of in that way of reflecting time. So Jill, I'm going to commit to Gil. All right, it's like
Gil,
Jif
yeah.
and Gif. I'm sorry if he hears this podcast. I'm getting it wrong. But he turns up and he's kind of reflective of, all right, now we're in like the timeline has shifted. We're in the sort of the 60s or something like that, and it's like you've got this sort of cool, and he's got the sideburns, and he's having a bit of a giggle, and you get that moment. So there's like, again, there's so many little things planted in the movie that pay off later. And it's like Red's the only guilty man at Shawshank, but we don't learn that. Well, it's like, but everyone else is innocent. Like Laura fucked me. It's like no, everyone's innocent. It's the long running joke of everyone at Shawshank is innocent. And it's kind of like at this point, Andy has won over. He's working with the he's
doing the
warden.
tax, the warden now. Right?
Yeah,
He's doing
and so he's getting a
books.
lot of favors. He's been writing to the state board every week. He's got funds. He's built this sort of library. Now he's educating other, like, he's finding a life inside the prison, and he's trying to bring positivity, and he's getting people through high school.
Yeah.
And he's doing the same thing with Gil. And it's like I said, it's private conversation with him and Red. And he goes, so what did Andy do? He's, double murder, wife from the golf pro, and greased them both. And he gives just enough details that you see, cuts back, and his face is almost like he's gone white. And that's when you get that twist of like, suddenly you get this moment of hope of, he goes, no, my cellmate, I've been all over, because again, it's been established, I've been in prison all over Maine. And his cellmate confessed to this murder. And you're like, there's this beacon of this moment of hope that we have, that we're given. And we've been like going through this movie. And then the warden has him murdered, and then throws Andy in the hole for 2 months. And it's just the darkest night of the soul of any movie, where you've just lost all hope that has been building up through this movie that we've been watching. It's crushing.
Yeah.
It's just, it's so
And
upsetting.
it broke my heart the first time I saw it, and it's still, even knowing it's coming just makes it so much fucking worse. Like,
And he's like, just
knowing
give
he's
me
like,
that
hey, want to
chance.
see you.
You know,
He lights a cigarette, and he's like, would you testify to that?
Yeah.
He's like, okay, and he drops the
would you
cigarette.
put your hand on the Holy Bible and it's like, swear to it in front of Lord and everybody?
Absolutely.
Just give me that chance. And you know, that's what I thought. And then bang, 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 bang. And then we
Blah,
see
blah, blah.
Clancy Brown, that reveal.
Ooh,
He
yeah.
steps out of the shadow and we see his
Yeah.
face. This movie is just
It's great.
incredible.
Yeah.
And that's that
Yeah.
thing. So you were asking, Ryan, like earlier. So when I watched this movie, we get to that conversation, and it's the key line of the movie, where Andy and Red are sitting next to each other. Andy's just come out of the hole after 2 months, which is insane. And Red's like worried about him. And he's like, his whole thing, you see him, he's almost, is he broken? What is he? And he says, get busy living or get busy dying. And you see Red's worried about him. He's talking about it. And then you go, William Sadler was like, wait a minute, I gave him 6 feet of rope today. And you've just got that longest night of my life moment. You're so worried. And then you have this moment of like, Andy doesn't come out of his cell. You're so worried. And then you get this moment of, wait a minute, he's not in his cell. And it's, for me, Fuzzy Britches, where is he? And he throws, like, the warden throws the thing, throws a piece of rock at that poster that's been initially.
But he's got my favorite line delivery. He's like, he just like a man up and disappear like a fart in the wind.
Like a fart in the wind. It was Marilyn Monroe, and then it's
Raquel Welch.
Raquel.
Was it Marilyn Monroe, or it was
Marilyn was
Rita
the second
Hayworth
one.
first.
Rita
Yeah.
first, and that's
And
our
then
passage
Marilyn.
of time as well as those famous movies.
Yeah.
But when the warden pulls that thing off, the camera pulls back through that hole, and the next shot is the.
What I noticed this watch too is when he throws the rock through it, you hear the rock like
ding, ding. That sequence of shots, that is pure heroin to me. That is pure happiness. I watched this movie just for that moment of just like, oh my God, because I'll always be taken back to being a teenager going, what the fuck? Like, that's what this movie's about. Like, oh my God.
Second only to someone saying I'm putting together a team is someone escaping from a prison for me in like movie cliches.
And it's even telegraphed with Alexander Dumbass and the Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
The Count of Monte Crisco, as they say in this.
Crisco. Yeah.
But it's like, oh, you'll like that. It's about a prison break. And you just goes past, you're just convinced it's going to be a story about, Andy and Red in prison, and eventually they'll just like,
the third act of this movie is maybe some of the best shit you'll ever see.
Absolute joy.
You cathart so hard. So hard do you cathart.
It's I mean, like Will, Ryan, I mean, like that moment for you, what is it? Because for me, it is just
it's the release you need after seeing him like going through this thing, like where he's working with the warden, he's finally like getting on his good graces, and then he says, "Why are you being so obtuse?" And then it just fucking spirals out of control, and he sits in solitary when he gets back and he's like, "Give him another month." You're like, fucking hell, man.
Yeah.
And then he gets out and he just escapes that night. He's like, I'm out.
Yeah. He's like, he's like, well, that's when he's like, because that damn warden, that's when he really gets, no, man. It's like, I'm going to put you
He was
down
a dick in this, and he was a dick in Demolition Man.
Yeah. You're going to feel like you were fucked by a freight train. Like, it's like, oh, this guy's pure fucking.
What Bible passage is that from?
I think that's Mark 3:17 or something.
Yeah. I think God said it, actually. It's Jesus.
I got to read the Bible more.
And Adam was like, what's a freight train? And God was like, shut up.
I'll show you. I'll show you.
Yeah, we're reading from the book of bukkake.
The book was better.
Oh my God.
Page
that was a pop-up book, right?
The scratch and sniff was really over.
Oh my God, Will's mum, I'm sorry, I'm gonna get slapped by my wife when she listens to this episode. But because she listens to every episode as well. Thank you guys, thanks for the support. But it's like, yeah, man, oh my goodness, I think there's no better fuck you, because the great thing about this movie is you go back and rewatch it knowing what's happening.
Yeah.
And there's little things, like for example, when his cell gets tossed, Andy's reading the Bible.
Yeah.
Reading the Bible because his hammer is in the Bible. And it's just that sort of like, and it's the thing that the warden loves, and he's got his whole, he knows the Bible, but it's the little fuck you of, you were right, warden, salvation lay within. And you get that flop over, and again,
Exodus.
The joy.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's all right, Ryan, is like, if you need to cathart about something, if you need to see someone struggle and still win and find the confidence or the positivity or the drive to live, get busy living or get busy dying.
Yeah. And it's just the most beautiful, like it's not like he just gets out. It's like everything that happens after that, when
Act 4.
Yeah. Like, I guess not even an epilogue, but yeah. Right.
It's Act 4 is wonderful. It makes me feel so good because you get this joy of Andy succeeding, and you get Red telling the stories. I imagine him driving in his, I'm not going to do the walking voice, but I imagine him driving in his drop top, on the beach, like knowing he's done it, and you get that shot, which would almost be the end of any movie.
There's him driving.
Then you also cut back to, well, Red's still in prison.
Yeah, he's telling the story. I always forget that it's him. He's not narrating. He's telling the story to the parole board.
Yeah, in a way, almost. Yeah, it's just like, there he is. It's you don't know what's going to happen to Red. You've almost forgotten that he's our protagonist in a way. And you get the 3 scenes. You get the first introduction to Red is at his 20-year parole. Yeah. At his 30-year, he says the same thing with this wry smile on his face. By the time he comes to his 40-year, he goes, just stamp the goddamn.
Yeah, because I think at that point he's thinking too like Brooks, but also I think he's, at that point he's got that fear that the same fear that Brooks had. So it's that realization at this point. I don't think he wants to get out, and he just says how he's feeling, and they're like, "Fuck you, get out of here."
Yeah, and it's like, and we'll do a quick aside about the Brooks mini movie, which is
Yeah.
Brooks
Oh,
gets released and we get Brooks as the narrator, which ends up being the letter. And Brooks gets out and the world's going too fast and Brooks just kills himself. And then you worry that's what Morgan's going to do. He comes out, it's the same thing is happening.
And the first time seeing that too, you really don't see that coming. Like you know, because he's packing all his stuff up, he's getting dressed, and he's pulling all his things away, and he scratches Brooks was here, and then you just see his legs dangling. That's like that was like heartbreaking when I first saw it. That's not easier now either. Yeah.
I mean, when I was a kid, I think I'm pretty sure I was asking my parents like, why did he? I couldn't comprehend like really what was going on right there. That someone had just.
And the thing about this movie is it even then, right? So before we had the big escape reveal, we've had that important conversation with Andy and Red where Andy was like, if you ever get out of here, Red, go and find this tree in the town of Buxton. And you're going to find this igneous rock. And you see Red's word, what's underneath it? And he goes, you'll see. And you wonder, part of you is like, are you going to see the gun? What are you going to see? And so eventually, once Red is out and he goes, and it's a shot of the tree and Red walking up, and it's the musical cue at the same time as always. That's when I'm like, again, I'm fully just feeling everything in this movie. It's making me cry. I'm so happy, kind of like thing. And the way he acts out, he finds the little box and he opens it up, and there's the way he looks around.
He like looks over, yeah.
He's always checking.
Imagine he went all the way over and just couldn't find it.
Right. Yeah. It had already been dug up, I suppose.
Yeah. It's the initial. This is where geocaching was invented. Right. Which is really fun. If you've never done geocaching, great fun. Download the app. It's a great way to spend some time. But yeah, he opens this box and suddenly there's this letter from Andy, and it's like, you remember the name, don't you? And Zihuatanejo. And then you get that moment of Red's back narrating. He's like, no one's going to throw up any roadblocks for an old con like me, Fort Hancock, Texas. And he's like, and it's almost that moment. It's like, I realized that he's there and he's sitting out the the bus. And he goes, I got this feeling. I guess it's the feeling that only a free man can feel. And that's when I go, oh, Morgan Freeman. God damn. There's that little crossover kind of thing. But you get that final moment, and when the movie is just about the love between two best mates.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, you finally see Andy on the beach, and the reunion of them is done from 1,000 feet in the air.
Yeah.
You just see them hug, and the credits roll, and it was the best movie experience of my entire life.
And you get Tim Robinson just looking tan and hot, just full Bull Durhaming it.
With a bit of Kevin
it's so
Costner
funny.
But what happens after that? I'm like, do they get up to like a life of crime together? Or they just go around Bonnie and Clyding? Like, what's
they
going
just
on?
live on the beach and play chess and drink.
Play chess, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
it's so funny because we had seen Bull Durham and it just felt like he was totally miscast in that, and seeing him here, like I said back then, Tim Robbins can only play like two things. He can only play like complete weirdos or Andy Dufresne.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is like the role he was born to play. Like it's fantastic.
Every time when that final shot, the blue water and the credits start rolling again, I flash back to this teenager at 1 a.m. just crying his eyes out, like sitting on the sofa, and it's like, we talk about it before, which is something you can change. You can get into your settings on Netflix, Amazon Prime and stuff like that. That sometimes a movie ends and you want to just sit with the music and the credits for a minute and think about shit instead of going, do you want to watch this? No, I don't. I want to listen to this music. That I remember sitting there just going, and I remember my thought being, Ollie, for 2 years you could have watched this movie and you haven't. You've skipped over this movie 100,000 times and not watched it, and you could have watched it. And I was like, that's why I was like, I wanted to just like tell my brother, I was like, thanks for recording that movie, man.
That's the best way to discover it too, because you'll always have that memory.
That's what I mean. Yeah. And that's why I say go into a movie blind. Go into a movie completely blind, because I mean, had I gone in knowing the twist, it would have been so different. I went in and I experienced all of Andy's story with him, and the darkest and the lightest and everything else. But that moment of, wait a minute, he escaped is the most fun amazing feeling a movie I think has ever given me.
And the way that's filmed too, with his escape and then going back to like the reveal, because you see it at the very beginning with him once he gets the rock hammer and just like starting to carve his name.
Flashback.
But you don't see
end.
you don't see the rock fall out, and it's just him. That's what he loves. He's just feeling it, and he's like, "Oh shit!" And it took him. He's like, "It'll take you 600 years to climb out of here."
It took Andy 20.
Yeah.
But that's what I love. It's like it's no surprise that Andy is like, like the study of rocks. Rocks are formed by pressure and time, and that's the only thing that you really have in prison: pressure and time. I could watch this movie 100 more times, and it just never get old. Never get old. This was a really interesting week, guys. What a fantastic week of movies. But let's try and get into it, and it's not gonna be easy actually. I mean, I think I've got a clear leader in my head, but we try to answer the movie as which of these movies best represents the state of Maine. Now, it's an interesting one because this is our first animated movie, is it not?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But Iron Giant comes out strong for Maine.
And it's got our favorite thing, that little small town feel.
Yeah, it's got the small town. It's like it's right on the water. You've got all this sort of like the features. You've got the changing of the weather and stuff like that. Shawshank. Now, Shawshank was majority shot in Ohio. Okay, but it's got that vibe like Buxton and Maine and the beauty and the sort of stuff like that. Where Hot American Summer, kind of a tricky one because it's 95% of it stuck,
I just picked that because I wanted to watch it.
Yeah.
It just happened to be in Maine.
I started a podcast.
And it's the most realistic of the three. I mean,
I specifically started a podcast just so I could talk about movies with you guys. So,
yeah, right. Yeah.
It's like literally, even if we have no listeners, I would still do this forever. So what do you guys think? I mean, what do you guys think about?
I think for me, it would have to. I'm leaning more towards the Iron Giant, just because you get more of a taste of Maine versus it just being set inside of a dreary old prison or a dreary old summer camp. A prison unto itself. But I think it feels more Maine. You get like the shipping yard, like the boats and everything like that, and you get the woods, which I assume is a thing in Maine. I don't know.
But I love that we're like the most realistic depiction of Maine is the fake one.
Yeah.
We completely.
But I mean, but we always go based off feeling,
Yeah, for sure.
Are you insinuating that the Iron Giant wasn't filmed in Maine? Psychopath.
Probably animated in Burbank, California.
Shit.
But it's got like we were saying, small town feel. It's got the locals, the people. It's got the environment, the giant robots. Everything you find in Maine is all there.
I mean, like getting sort of into it when we were looking at movies set in Maine. I mean, it was basically every Stephen King ever. We had it, Pet Sematary, but there's also things like Lake Placid, Casper, Cider House Rules.
Ooh, you really wanted to pick Casper, well, huh?
Yeah, I did. My forever crush, Christina Ricci. Keep that going.
But there's Shutter Island. I was very tempted. Message in a Bottle, like the Mist, Carrie. So basically, just name any. The Man Without a Face. That was one Ryan and I with.
Oh, I love that movie so much.
Yeah, I remember seeing that in the theaters, and then it never showed anywhere ever again. Like it never popped up on HBO or anything like that.
Maximum Overdrive, obviously the best Stephen King movie.
I was just listening to a podcast about that. So yeah, I mean, like I guess I'm with you guys. Is that I was watching, because for me, I immediately went to Shawshank, but kind of like you're saying is as much as Shawshank. While it does mainly take place in the prison, there is stuff that happens outside, and we do see some of the other sort of like the vibe of the place. Yeah. But I think the Iron Giant, I think it's the powerhouse. It's the heavyweight in this particular.
It's the main event. Terrible, fucking terrible.
The entire state just unsubscribed from the podcast.
It wasn't the bukkake. It wasn't all the bukkake talking.
They were on board for that. Yeah. That's huge in Maine.
Oh man,
it's always raining. So is this going to be one of those weeks where it's like a non-controversial one? Are we all agreeing that?
I think so.
Iron Giant. It's got
feels more Maine.
Yeah, I mean, all these movies have heart. I mean, the heart for Red Hot American Summer, I think, is the dedication for just wanting to have fun. You sense the fun of the whole cast. The Shawshank Redemption, the heart of that is just in everything. In again, like just the love between Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins and like the struggle and the things they go through. Yeah. But the Iron Giant is just pure, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a pure movie with pure joy and stakes and lessons and everything else. But kind of like Brad Bird said, he's like, Maine in the 50s, this place, this time, this everything. It's the perfect setting to drop this giant robot into, which is a weird thing to say, but he's spot on.
Yeah.
So we're going with it?
I agree. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yep.
So there it is. So the official movie to define the state of Maine, at least until someone can think of a better one, for now is going to be the 1999 movie, The Iron Giant, directed by Brad Bird. I believe it's streaming on Paramount right now.
Yeah,
it was an interesting week, actually, because midweek, two of the movies switched from HBO to Paramount. So honestly, to anybody that listens to this podcast, let me recommend that you can either visit the website or download the app Just Watch. Is an app that you can type in any movie into it and it will tell you where it is available to stream or to be rented or everything. It has every single streamer. It's the most essential movie app if you want to know how or where to watch a movie.
I get all my movies at piratemovie.free, so I didn't have that problem at all. Yeah.
I got all these movies. I got all these movies from right over there on my Blu-ray shelf. They're all right there.
Honestly, I do want to come one night and see that movie shelf, buddy. That is.
I had to watch Wet Hot American Summer on my original DVD, not Blu-ray,
because it was on Netflix forever, but it's not on Netflix anymore. I think I had to rent Wet Hot American Summer. I rented that.
I don't own a lot of DVDs, but I own that one. It's right next to my Ricky O Criterion collection.
Oh my God, Ricky O. God. So we kind of touched on it a little bit. Were there any other sort of also rounds that you guys thought about? Like for me, I think it was I almost went with Shutter Island because I've only seen it once, and it is Scorsese.
Yeah, you did mention that. I think we even talked about if we do a special episode is only picking Stephen King movies. And if that was the case, I don't remember if Sleepwalkers is set there, but I do love that cat incest movie.
Ooh.
Sorry, cat, incest movie. I didn't want to clarify that. I don't want PETA coming after me.
What about you, Will?
Yeah, I'd have to look over because there were a ton of movies on the list that I was like, oh, we just got so many to choose from. But I landed on Iron Giant pretty quick. Had I not, I probably would have picked one of the Stephen King like movies. You know,
one of Secret Window.
Oh God. What's that one with the poop monsters? Is that a
Dream?
What is that one?
I think that's Alaska.
Dreamcatcher. Shit weasels.
Yes, that's what it is. Oh God.
Which also has Morgan Freeman in it.
Oh yeah. I saw that in the theater and boy was I let down. Oof.
That is I watched that on a DVD or a VCD and I remember being
it's one of those that like starts out really cool and then
gets so weird.
It's like 50%.
Talking about shit weasels, and you're like, what the fuck is going on?
Honestly, it's like 50% of Stephen King's books where you're just like, oh, this is a good beginning, and then you get halfway through, you're like,
this is when the cocaine kicked in.
Or this is where sobriety kicked in.
Yeah.
Oh, sobriety.
It ain't the Dark Tower. So
I read the first 4.5 books or 5 books of the Dark Tower, and I lost momentum when it became the flashback.
Who's doing the new one? The new movie?
The Gunslinger.
Flanagan.
Ooh, nice.
Allegedly, it's not been confirmed, but that's the best pairing.
Well, now that I think his deal is done with Netflix, so he's he can go kind of do whatever.
He's dripping
he wants.
in money.
Yeah, that is a dream director to put on that. Those are my favorite books of all time. So, and that's the best person to put on it. I hope it happens, but
I never finished. It was that flashback book that was a book entirely of the gunslinger telling a flashback story. And I got halfway through that book and kind of lost interest.
That's like the best one. What are you doing? That's Wizard of Glass. That's a great one. The next one is the Magnificent Seven, but in the Dark Tower universe. You gotta get through.
The thing is, I was really into it for a while. It's like that is a wacky, like crazy.
And for the listener at home, Will also does a Dark Tower podcast.
Yeah. Just
that's Will's full time. He just has 16 podcasts.
Yeah.
He just does
one of them's got a hit. Hopefully it's this
one of these days.
All right, guys. Well, at this point, then it's time for us to decide where we're going next week. I decided I'm going to keep it pretty simple. Actually, we're going to stick around in New England. There's a lot of small states around there. There's a lot of stuff I don't know about these states, so I just went whoop. I threw the dart and it hit in New Hampshire. Interesting, actually. I went in just really quickly before we started this episode. I sort of went into the whole New Hampshire thing. a whole bunch of movies I've never heard of, filled with actors and actresses we are very familiar with. So there's going to be, I think, some interesting. I think I'm circling one maybe that I recently discovered, courtesy of Mrs. But we're going to go to the state of New Hampshire. So if you guys get your thoughts on it, for you guys listening at home, if it's still before we've dropped the next episode, hit us up. Let us know. Get into the comments and talk about the movies that you think about when it comes to New Hampshire. I don't know. Is it going to be political? I don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be fascinating. You can always find me online as Ollie_Pettigrew or That Englishman in Texas. I do enjoy when people drop in. The great thing about my videos that I put out every Monday is that still getting people from a month ago, 6 months ago, dropping comments and new suggestions for movies when we get to it next time. You can find Will online as entitled Willennial. He'll always pop in and do videos on our podcast as well. We're always looking for suggestions. We're always looking for tips. You can find Ryan's designs. For example, Hung Like a Horse, the James Hong podcast t-shirt.
I don't remember what episode that was from, but holy shit, that was great.
I think that was from the Blade Runner episode.
Yes, that's right. With Carrie Byron.
Yeah, with Carrie Byron. Yeah. Ryan will do random designs. You can find those at threadless.com/Rhino Digital, RYNO Digital.
I'm tempted to do your Shawshank bukkake one. But, I don't know.
You can only sell that one on OnlyFans.
It's like glow in the dark ink.
Oh no.
Other than that, you guys can find us. We do have a Facebook page, The United States of a Movie, where some of you are following us. We do have a Reddit as well, The United States of a Movie, where you can find us as well. Please just thank you so much for taking part and watching either us on YouTube or listening to us on your various podcasting places. The one thing you can really do that helps if you're watching us on YouTube right now is drop some comments, like, subscribe, put the notifications on. It really just helps us with the algorithm. We like to try and interact with you guys in the comments. Same thing if you're listening to us on the podcasting sites. Rate us 5 stars. You know we're amazing. Share us with your buddies. And then we will join you guys next time when we head to New Hampshire. But Will, Ryan, 5 stars. Great week, guys.
Yeah, what a collection of movies we did for this week. This
was a great
wall-to-wall bangers. But I'm still going to go back and watch Wet Hot American Summer again. Sorry.
I think I'm going to have to do that too as well.
And we'll say it's much better the second time around for sure.
So I'm hearing. Same as bukkake. All right, on that particular note, guys, Ryan, Will, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. For everybody at home, we apologize for those jokes.
Yeah.
This
is going to get taken down on YouTube for sure.
We're banned forever now.
Either that or it's going to be our biggest episode yet. Guys, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the United States of Movie Podcast.